Hey, Dr. Heather, welcome to the Optimal Health Podcast. Thank you for joining me. So tell us a little bit, we've had the intro and stuff, but tell us in your words, like, what is it that you do and what has got you to this point? Why are you doing this?
Well, I think ultimately my big mission is to change the face of healthcare. And what that ultimately means is that, when we're dealing with a health challenge, we don't first just run and jump on medication to cover up the symptom and continue just to slow down the progression of a disease. My mission is to really for us to take back our health and to take responsibility and really work to resolve these underlying health issues and bring the body back into balance. Now, why am I here is because I've dealt with my own health issues. And I've dealt with a lot of Hashimoto's and autoimmunity and low thyroid issues for me personally, which is why that's my slant or my focus in clinical practice. But I think you can apply the solution across the board and to really know and understand that your body is born to heal. And we are literally self healing organisms. And we just have to remember, because we were all born knowing that, we just have to remember that the body is always trying to get back into balance. It's always trying to move into survival, and the body can heal. You just have to make sure that you put it in the right circumstances in order to do that.
Yeah. So you got into it through your own journey there. So was it Hashimoto's that you had or
Yeah,
got
so
into remission now?
Hashimoto's or yeah, autoimmunity. I really struggled with weight loss in the beginning. I was overweight, about 50 pounds heavier than I am now. I had really bad fatigue when I was going through undergrad. And I go to the doctor and he's like, I said, could you just check me for low thyroid? Back then it was pre Dr. Google, and I had to look through medical textbooks to try to figure out what was wrong with me. Good thing I was in pre med, so I
I was
kind
going
of
to say,
was
were you in medical
in
school
that
then?
world.
So yeah.
Yeah, I was in the world. So he goes, sure. So he checks me for low thyroid. I come back in a couple of weeks and he's like, yeah, you don't have low thyroid or anything. Everything looks normal. And oh, by the way, you're probably not going to be able to have kids naturally. You're going to deal with infertility. So whenever you're ready to get pregnant, just come back and I'll help you. And I'm like,
Wow.
what did he just say to me? And I will tell you that I am so grateful every day that I had that experience, because that experience helped me to shape who I am today and say, you know what, I'm not going to have that experience. I need to figure out what's going on with me and I need to get my body back into balance, because I'm not going to go down that fertility issue. And, once I figured it out, I mean, it took me about a year to lose about 50 pounds, but I've been able to keep it off. I think it's been like 25 years now since that was the case. And, I have two beautiful boys that I had naturally without fertility treatments and all
Amazing.
of that stuff. So, that is a bit my journey. But in the meantime, I found that I had Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune condition where the immune system attacks the thyroid, and it doesn't show up as low thyroid for many, many years. So every time they did the lab test, it was like, yeah, everything's fine. They're just going to wait until it becomes a disease so they can apply a medication. But the body gives you symptoms to communicate that something is not right. And so, anytime you have a symptom, it means that the body is out of balance. What it doesn't mean is that you have a disease, right? It could mean that, but a lot of times you get a symptom before it actually becomes a disease process. And that's just your body's way of saying, hey, I need a little help here. There's some kind of underlying imbalance that I can't overcome. And so that's when we go on the journey to really start to restore health and looking into functional medicine versus the disease drug therapy model. Now, I want to be clear, the disease drug therapy model has a role and it
Mhm.
has a place. And I think it is really important and it really shines when we're in emergency states.
Yeah.
But where it really fails is when we are in chronic degenerative states, where the goal of that model is to slow down the progression of the disease. It's not meant to reverse or to bring back into health or to bring back into balance.
How have you found being in the US, and this is just a side question as such that I find over here being a functional medicine practitioner, when we link with a lot of Western doctors, some of them get their backs up because we're using different models. And like we have the National Health Service here in the UK, and I'm trying to like take pressure off that. And I also know that they're fighting a losing battle because their like guidelines are that have an appointment in like 7 or 8 minutes, and there's people which want drugs, drugs, drugs. How have you found your interaction with Western medicine over in the US as a functional medicine practitioner?
Yeah, it's interesting because I started doing functional medicine before it was ever called functional medicine,
Hmm.
right? So I will tell you 23 years ago, when I was telling people that you could actually reverse diabetes, they thought I was the biggest crazy person, and I've been called all kinds of names. And yes, I have had, the traditional medical doctor very angry, upset. I've had patients where they threw their labs up in the air and walked out of the office just very angry. And I think that was early on. Now it's a completely different landscape. I think that it's the writing is on the wall when you take pre and post labs in there, when someone has actually reversed diabetes and someone is totally turning their health around and they no longer need all these medications. It's really hard to ignore. And I think because it's becoming so prevalent. So when I started, it was before social media. I mean, like when I started, it was like, oh, Dr. Heather, I really think you need a website. Like that's that's how long ago it was. And so I'm like, okay, God, if I have to have a website, I'll have a website. So now though, with the information age where information flows readily, that more and more people are having more awareness. I think that the science is moving in this direction. I think it's just become hard to ignore. And I think the traditional medical model no longer has a big monopoly because of social media and because of how we can get the information out there. Before, it was all blocked, right? Like, you didn't really have an outlet to tell people, how amazing this solution was. So, the landscape from 20 years ago to today is completely different. Certainly, you run up against some roadblocks, but I find that more and more practitioners are willing to work together with you to
Hmm.
help this person because again, when the body is in an emergency state, it needs and it I don't know if it needs, but many people do need medication, and you can use these two models together to really benefit the patient wholly. And the landscape is certainly changing, and more medical doctors are moving into functional medicine. And so it's just really interesting to see how much it has totally turned. And I agree with you. I can't even imagine the constraint that a traditional medical doctor must feel when they have to see patients in 5 to 7 minutes. Like, how do you even do a full health? You can't even thoroughly go through labs and
Exactly.
order the appropriate labs and do a full, complete, analysis of this patient and where they need to go. So it's a really difficult job, and I think more and more traditional medical doctors are getting tired of that. They're feeling the constraints, and then they're seeing functional medicine doctors get amazing results and not have those crazy constraints, which is why a lot of them are switching.
Okay. And do you do you think it's getting worse? Like more people are having thyroid issues, whether it's hypo or going down the autoimmune route. I'm seeing more autoimmune coming up generally, but do you feel it's getting worse?
Um, it's hard to say, is it getting worse or do we have more awareness?
Yeah.
All right, because I think that, 20 years ago, nobody even knew what Hashimoto's was. And like I said, that's autoimmune to the thyroid. And now, whenever I have patients come in, they are already coming in diagnosed with Hashimoto's. So I see it, yes, more and more because I think that there's more of an awareness, but that doesn't discount the increased prevalence of autoimmunity in general in the population. I think, with our ever growing toxic world and the stress levels of our lives, I think it does continue to push and turn on autoimmunity.
Okay. And going back to that test you had, talking about like when the doctor said about thyroid, or we can't see thyroid issues, but they're not going to have fertility. Just out of interest, what markers did they look at there?
Well, they didn't look at any markers, but one of my symptoms was I stopped having a menstrual cycle. And
Okay.
so you would think that they would look at my hormones. You would think that maybe they would look at my blood sugar and see if I had PCOS, or think that you would think that they would measure it, but they did not measure any of those
Wow.
hormones whatsoever. And the cherry on top was, he said, I think that the reason that you don't have a menstrual cycle is because you exercise too much. And that was actually the key that made me say, oh my gosh, I do not believe this doctor one bit, because I knew, yes, when a female exercises too much and their body fat goes below 10%, then they will get amenorrhea, where they stop menstruating.
Yeah.
That was not me at all. I exercise like 4 days a week, and I did not do any kind of excessive running. And I think for him, he was just like, oh, yeah, I think it's because you exercise too much. And so we're going to just push you down this infertility path. And I was like, okay, that is not, what he said wasn't true to me, and it's not going to be my story. So I need to figure this out.
Wow, I'm like a little gobsmacked when I hear that there's not that much test. Like, I've seen, like, I can believe it. That's the worrying thing, and I don't mean to criticize Western medicine. I'm in the same agreement of emergency is needed when we look at the healthcare system as such. But I see a lot of times that I speak to so many women that have been given HRT and they've been on it for 2, 3 years. I'm like, so what have your bloods shown? And they're like, I haven't done bloods. I'm like, "Well, where were you? Where are you now?" And then on the other hand, like as someone that I had to use TRT because I screwed up my hormones when I competed in bodybuilding, that trying to go from a private clinic to be onto the NHS is pretty impossible to actually be able to do it. And even then, to get a guy to have his testosterone tested, like, and to get TRT on the NHS, it's like, it's really hard. It's like getting blood from a stone. Literally, it's impossible. But then, like my wife, our daughter is just over 5 months old. We went for the first health check, and the doctor said to my wife, "You're 42. Like, do you want HRT because you just had a baby?" I'm like, wow. It was literally the day after, like trying to go to um like go away from a private clinic with TRT. So I digress with that. But on that note as well, like you work primarily with women, right?
Yes.
Like something that I'm seeing, like yes, more females with thyroid conditions, but in the clinic that I'm running, like more guys are seeing that there's thyroglobulin and peroxide. I can't even say
Yeah, yeah.
peroxidase antibodies that are higher and even more higher elevated TSH, which is having a knock-on effect. Like, or we're seeing it come up as potentially low testosterone, but it's actually thyroid. So even if they did get their testosterone tested, it could be thyroid and not the testosterone, and they're just saying, "Oh, it's not testosterone. You're just stressed." Have
Yeah.
you seen that?
So, yeah, absolutely. But what I think is really important is that symptoms will mimic different conditions. For example, low thyroid, every symptom of low thyroid, whether it's fatigue, inability to lose weight or weight gain, or depression, anxiety, can't sleep at night, hair falling out. Okay, all of those symptoms, you can pretty much lay them right on top of dysglycemia
Hmm.
or insulin resistance or a blood sugar problem. You can pretty much lay them right on top of low testosterone for men or hormonal imbalances for women. You can lay it right on top of adrenal dysfunction. So that's why it's so important to do thorough testing and not to be boxed into, okay, I think it's a low testosterone, or I think it's low thyroid. But how about we look at the body as a whole and open up our approach instead of having such a myopic approach, because usually when the body is giving you symptoms, it's coming from multiple places, not just one place. So when we say, kind of like, oh my gosh, your testosterone is low, jump on this testosterone and you're going to feel better, a lot of times you will feel better for a short period of time. But if you don't address all those underlying issues, or even think about, why does this person have hormonal imbalances,
Yeah.
right? So why do they have low testosterone? Is it because they have adrenal issues? Is it because they are turning it all into estrogen? Maybe they have a blood sugar issue and they're going through andropause. Where is it a thyroid issue? Because when we're dealing with hormones, it transfers over to thyroid as well, and autoimmunity. And I will say this: I think it's very rare that I've ever seen a male who has low thyroid who did not have Hashimoto's. It's more common in females, but I would say that in the males that I have treated, it's almost always if they have low thyroid, I'm like, oh my gosh, this has got to be Hashimoto's. And then as we dig deeper, there was usually a very stressful event that happened, whether it was a big job change or financial stress or a move or a divorce or a death in the family. There's usually one major stressor for men that kind of turns Hashimoto's on. For women, it turns on mostly after the birth of a child because your immune system flip flops from Th1 to Th2 to keep the baby and all that stuff. So it's more prevalent in women, but it does happen in men. And usually it's because of one kind of triggering event, but it could be hormonal imbalances, right? It could be that you, like you said, you kind of, your hormones got really out of balance after doing some bodybuilding or whatever. It could have been that. So we just have to really look to see, okay, what are the underlying imbalances? What are the highest priorities? And let's treat all of those things. And you pretty much have to do it simultaneously in
Yep.
order for the body to start healing and for those symptoms to start to go into resolution.
Yeah. And I think this is where the functional medicine model seems like it's like I don't using the term head and shoulders above the rest when I'm actually looking at a top-down approach is quite relevant, really, when we think about it like one of my mentors, Dr. Tatis Karajian, that we talk about the root cause and we talk about root cause all the time and like just how like it might be showing up down a little bit lower, but it's usually coming from the brain and is it HPA axis and so forth, like
Yep.
all these things going on. You've got your thyroid transformation blueprint, 7 pillars. So to hang on, I'm going to get the title right. I've written it down and I just completely butchered the title. So your thyroid transformation blueprint, the 7 pillars
Yeah.
you need to follow to bring your autoimmune disease into remission. Tell us about these pillars.
So the first pillar is you have to have a constant pursuit of your goals. Okay, so that's where we really have to start on a human level in order to actually achieve something is that you've got to have very specific measurable goals, and this is very different than a New Year's resolution. All right, so you've got to have specific measurable goals, but they have to be tied to a motivation. So like weight loss is one of the most common goals. In America, 80% of Americans are overweight, obese, or morbidly obese. So pretty much everyone's, New Year's resolution or goal as it relates to health is to lose weight. But we always will negotiate with ourselves and we will always say we can start tomorrow and we'll say, well, just a little bit won't hurt that much or, it's not that big of a deal. And so then or we'll start tomorrow and like we keep negotiating with ourselves because we don't have a motivation. So if you will tie a deep motivation to your goals, it helps you continue to move forward, overcome obstacles, get back on it if you fall off. Like a deep meaningful motivation would be I want to lose weight so I can be active with my grandkids. I want to lose weight to prevent diabetes. I don't want to have the complications of diabetes, the blindness, the kidney failure, the amputations. I don't want to get cognitive decline. So all of those have to be really and truly deep, meaningful motivations to you. I don't want to be a burden on my family or, all of those things. And it has to be so real. And you have to have it in front of you. I even have my patients make dream boards so that you can really and what I would call it if I was in the male, I would call it a drive board. Like what is it that really drives you instead of a dream board? I think
It's
that's more
amazing how like just a
masculine.
little twist in language will get people a little bit more engaged, right?
Right? I think it's really hard to make males do dream boards. And so, a funny story. I'm never going to get through the pillars, but a funny
All
story.
good.
For the holidays, my whole family comes here, brothers, dad, nieces, nephews, my siblings, my family. And I said, we're going to do a project this year. And the girls are going to make dream boards and the men are going to make drive boards. And what I want you to put into your mind is what is it that you're trying to achieve in the next year to 5 years. And so literally everyone participated. I could not believe it. My dad was very hesitant, and he was sitting there kind of watching. And all the other men, my kids were really into it, really thinking about the future and what they were trying to achieve. And then my dad started getting into it, and then it was really cool. And it was a good family project, and we all got to share what it was that our dreams are. Because when you share it and you make it known, then you start to feel more accountable. And then when you have those visions in front of you every single day, it keeps reminding you and keeps you right on track. So, anyway, that was a really good activity. And I think I'm going to make it a tradition. They're probably all rolling their eyes if they are listening to this, but it was a really good thing. Okay. So, the pillar number one is you have to have goals and motivations. Number two, you have to have comprehensive testing. And like we were talking about, it's not just I have a thyroid problem and I'm going to run a full thyroid panel. It's like, okay, what else is driving the thyroid issue? Where else do we need to look at so that we can truly take a comprehensive approach? And you can't take a comprehensive approach unless you have comprehensive testing.
Mhm.
Okay, so pillar number two is comprehensive testing.
What would
Pillar
you
number,
look at
well,
with testing aspects? I know it's obviously it's individual, whether there's different markers, but like look at anemia, look at like for
oh
red
yeah.
iron, all these sorts of things.
Yeah,
What
so
about
like
anything
in
like Cyrex Labs, like autoimmune, that sort of thing, antibodies?
Yeah, I can tell that we've been trained similarly. Yes,
Yeah.
Dr. Karazian is a mentor of mine for 20 years.
Wow.
So before it was a functional medicine thing. Um, so yes, we do like very thorough blood work where, yes, we're looking at anemia patterns, we're looking at underlying infections, we're looking at the full thyroid. I do a very extensive dysglycemia panel where I'm looking at not only fasting glucose and A1C, but we're looking at fasting insulin, glycomark, fructosamine, leptin, all the inflammatory markers. So we're doing a very extensive blood work. But on every patient, we always do a Dutch test where we're looking at the full circadian rhythm. We're looking at all the hormones, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, DHEA, melatonin. And then we do a stool test on everybody as well, where we're looking at not only the microbiome, but are there underlying infections? Because I find that there are so many times, I would probably guess about 70 to 80% of the time or higher, that our patients are dealing with underlying infections and they have no idea. Whether it's a chronic, bacterial infection or viral infection or a parasite or a gut infection. And that's very, very important to handle. And then on most patients, we do a total tox test because I have found most of my patients have autoimmunity.
Hmm.
So I have found that one of the underlying triggers is mold toxins because when you're dealing with Hashimoto's, most of them cannot clear mold efficiently genetically. And so then you'll start to build up your toxic load in the system, and it can be an underlying trigger. So we look for mold toxins, heavy metal toxins, environmental toxins. And you talked about brain health. Well, all of these people are having brain fog. Why? Well, they're probably all of these things impact the brain. So you got to really take a bigger approach. And then of course, we do Cyrex testing when appropriate.
Yeah.
So we can look at the antibody testing, the food sensitivity testing. You can dig even deeper into dysglycemia and brain health. So there's so much available that I think people don't even realize or understand that's available um, to you so that you can stop guessing. And that's really the only way to stop guessing, whether it's you're either suppressing symptoms with medication or sometimes on the nutraceutical or natural side, we're just practicing allopathic nutrition, meaning like we're applying nutrition to a symptom. So, for example, like if you have high blood sugar, well, just go take some cinnamon. Well, that probably isn't going to help your blood sugar fully because it could be an infection or it could be a toxin. There's obesogens and diabetogens that we're dealing with. The body is very complex, and to apply a simple approach usually is not going to work. What either way, natural or pharmaceutical. And so then pillar number three is analyzing the testing. So many people get labs done, and they even ask me, what labs do I need to do? And they'll wrestle with their doctors to order the labs, and they get the labs done. And the doctor said, I don't even know how to read this. I don't even know what these markers mean. Or they say everything is within the normal limits. You're good to go. Like nothing is wrong with you. And then they feel like a hypochondriac, and then they go into depression, and then they're like, something is wrong with me, but now they're saying nothing is wrong with me. But it does take it looking at it from a functional perspective, because there's patterns and it, it's not even just looking at optimal ranges or functional ranges, but as you know, there's patterns that happen, right? When we're
Yep.
looking at liver enzymes and blood sugar and triglycerides and cholesterol, like all of these things work together. And you have to know how to analyze it appropriately to understand where the imbalances are and what are the priorities. So then you can move into pillar number 4, which is customized care. That's when you can customize the care, is when you've done the testing, you have the appropriate analysis. Now we can apply a solution. And then pillar number 5 is that you need a coach to get through all of this, right? So, like, we are in information overload era. And if you are making your health decisions based on an Instagram reel, if you will wait 5 minutes, you will see another Instagram reel where whatever you were doing is completely the wrong thing. And
Mhm.
then you should be doing this thing. And then my patients are like, I have a lot of information. I've researched this, but all the research is now conflicting. And I thought I was doing it right. And now I'm doing it completely wrong. And we get really discouraged, and a lot of them give up. But you need a coach who's been through this, who has really helped a lot of patients through the ups and the downs. And I think a lot of people quit whenever they're right around the corner from healing, because they just don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. And also as well, like I always say that don't just trust someone based on their followers. Like do your research on that coach as well. Like look at their
Yes.
credentials, look at like are they listed on the sites they say that they're registered with and so forth. Like are they insured? Because we're in a generation where people will see someone with 100,000 followers and they may have just been sharing these reels and getting the numbers up and they think their word is the gospel, but then actually they're not qualified, and then they're
Yeah.
causing more problems as a result. And it's a worrying, like you have your credentials, but this industry is not as regulated as it could be purely. And I think with most industries as well, business coaching, banking, finance, whatever it is, like because of we live in the world of the influencer, it's hard.
Yeah. We just interviewed a health coach. Um, she literally did not know anything.
Wow.
And we were like, okay, how do you coach people? Like, what is your philosophy? And she's like, well, mostly it's just about moderation. And so we're like, okay, what does that mean? She's like, well, I teach people how to eat in the 5 food groups. And we're like, what are the 5 food groups? And so then she lists the 5 food groups. And then she was like, well, okay, tell us what are the most toxic foods that maybe we should avoid. And she said, there's no foods that you should avoid. You just need to do it in moderation. And so we're like, okay, thank you. But I mean, it was like, this is what is out there, meaning
Yeah.
like, you don't know what the credentials are. You can use a term health coach with nothing at all, and no experience. And I do think, for me, when I'm a busy clinician, I don't have a lot of time to make a bunch of different videos. So the quality and the experience of the clinician does not always equal the followers that you have on these social media platforms.
And it's interesting there what you say because I mean I would love it to be as simple as calories in versus calories out. I would love that. Like everyone would be healthier, but it's getting the body to function effectively. If we get
Yeah.
the body to function effectively, calories in versus calories out should effectively work. But how many people, percentage of the Western world, is actually functioning to the place where that works? And then we
Right.
see people as well. I mean, there's two more pillars, but we see people as well where um, don't use glucose monitors and stuff. I like even if someone doesn't necessarily seem that they've got look like they've got HbA1c in the fine like the right place, like, we want to see where their fasted glucose is at. Look at constant glucose. What is it doing during the night? They're like, oh, it is going to spike when you eat. Yeah, but is it coming straight back down? And is it going down low? Like, is it staying up? Like, what is actually going on? What is their glucose tolerance? Like,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts around that side of things?
Oh my gosh. We could do a podcast just on this. And I think the calories in, calories out is really flawed with our food system too. Like, even if you have great physiology, like my blood work, I would put it up against anybody's, right? I'm very proud of that because I am always working on it. But I also still have to pay attention to my glucose. I have a continuous glucose monitor on as we speak, right? Because it's such a key marker, and it's a key indicator of your overall health. And yeah, when you eat something not that will cause a glucose spike, you will see the spike, and if you're healthy, you'll see it come down. But the key is not to have those spikes, because more and more that you have those spikes, every single time you have that spike, you've got an insulin surge that caused the blood sugar to come down. And the more insulin surges you have, the more insulin resistant you become, and the more weight that you gain.
Yeah.
So it isn't about calories in, calories out. Is there some truth? If you definitely overeat calories, that's a problem, right? So there is some truth to it. But if you think about if you ate 500 calories of chocolate chip cookies and you ate 500 calories of a grilled chicken breast, the response on the inside, your physiological response is going to be completely different. You will you may or may not gain weight on 500 calories of cookies if that's all you were eating all day, but your physiology is going to be terrible. Your function, the inflammation, the insulin resistance, it's all going to start going in the wrong direction versus if you ate 500 calories of chicken. Now, I'm not suggesting anybody eats only 500
That's
calories.
that's a big chicken breast as well.
It's huge. I think it might be two.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
I think it might be two chicken breasts. You're getting loads of protein, and the
Yeah.
body would love you for it. But my point is that you've got to really understand what's going on with blood sugar, and it's about the quality of the calories more than the amount of the calories. And I think if you were eating good quality calories, it is very hard to overeat. Like, I've never had patients count calories, because if you're eating proteins and vegetables and a little bit of fruit and some good healthy fats, it's almost impossible to overeat. No processed or packaged foods. And so we don't ever have to count calories. We just have to make sure we're getting in enough protein. And you want to move the body also, right? We're not meant to be stationary. But yeah, you've got to look at your fasting glucose is one thing. And if you don't have high fasting glucose, your doctors typically aren't going to run an A1C and all these other markers. But I found it very helpful to run fasting glucose, A1C, fasting insulin. That's kind of like the baseline. And then we can look at glycomark, which is a 12-hour period. It tells us how much variability
Mhm.
the blood sugar, and it's 12 hours. So most of my patients get their blood work done first thing in the morning, so we can kind of get a gauge of, did they have a lot of variability at night. And then fructosamine is another marker that's more of like the 14 days prior to getting
Yeah.
your blood work done, and how much variability do you have. But for every single patient that we take, we put them on a continuous glucose monitor for at least 45 days, so that we can see how their body's responding to certain foods, because people don't all respond to a certain food in the exact same way. Some people have a higher baseline of stress, which is going to make the blood sugar more variable and fluctuate even more. So, understanding what's happening at night when the body is not eating food, we have to then look at adrenal function for blood sugar stability in the middle of the night. So, I think that we get really consumed by not only calories in and calories out, but the that changing our health is solely based on our food, when it is not. Because, as you know, having an underlying infection will raise blood sugar. Having a high low level of stress will raise blood sugar. So there's other things that our blood sugar is dependent upon. And so we just get so focused in on the diet has to be perfect, and that's the only answer, when in reality the body is a lot more complex than that. But I will say, you cannot stabilize and normalize glucose without having a good diet. So you have to do that as a baseline, and then we got to look at all the other stuff going on underneath the surface.
There's also as well, it's like when you speak about at the start of this show, you said about the doctor said you exercise too much. That's
Mm-hmm.
one of the tools I get people to look at with a glucose monitor, because like some people where exercise, and it used to be for me, like exercise was my release. I remember
Mhm.
like it didn't really stop until during COVID, and I remember literally the lockdown happened, and I was like, how am I going to get through the gym like with no gym in 3 weeks? And it was a lot longer than 3 weeks, and I survived. But it was very
You
much
thought
like,
it was going to be 3 weeks,
yeah,
but
like
then it
they
ended up
told us
being
that.
three
So
months.
yeah, exactly. They told us that. So, but let's not go down that route.
We won't.
Yeah, let's not get banned or anything. But very much that I see so many people that are pushing knock-on effects of their hormones. And we talk about glucose management, but as I say, they're smashing it in the gym and their glucose is going really high. And they're like, why is my sugar level, my glucose levels, my sugar levels going high? And I'm like, this is what happens when we're working that hard and the cortisol release. And it's a massively powerful tool, right?
Yep.
And also as well, then we also get into, you say about the quality of food. The other thing we've got, this wasn't on the questions list, but the other thing we have now is the GLP-1, so the Manjaro side of things and semaglutide, that people are then eating less, but then they're only eating the palatable foods and getting even less protein. So already having like 80, 90 grams of protein, well, even probably about 60, 70 grams of protein, if that a day. And now they're going to like, I'm so full. So whereas I've had people come to me with they've been on Manjaro, they've lost a lot of weight and they're suffering the side effects of that, but it's getting them stabilizing. Like you can lose weight, but we need to do it a bit slower. And we also need to
Yeah.
focus on protein first, looking at nutrient deficiencies. And if you are stuffed after eating 3 or 4 mouthfuls of food, let's at least make that 3 or 4 mouthfuls of food good food. So
Yep.
it helps you recover. Are you seeing similar things over there?
Of course. And I think that there's a lot of social pressure over here. Like, for example, my mom was like, Heather, all of my friends are losing all of this weight and they did not even change what they're eating. She's like, they're sitting in front of me eating like dessert and cookies and all of that. And I'm over here trying to follow the recommendations and I'm trying to do it right, but the weight loss is really slow. I'm like, Mom, don't worry, because what's going to happen is they're going to gain all of that weight back, and now they're going to have to deal with all the side effects of what's going on. And I do think it's important. They're not learning how to eat and they're not learning how to change their physiology. And yes, maybe that might be helpful for some people to kind of break some of the loops that they get stuck in psychologically with food and the cravings that they have. But at the end of the day, those GLP-1s increase insulin production from the pancreas. So when you increase insulin production, your cells are more exposed to insulin and you're going to get more insulin resistance. Yes, you're losing weight because you're eating less calories, and that will be temporary. So you will lose weight because you're eating less calories, and then you'll get into a plateau. And then what do? They go back to their doctor and their doctor increases their dose. And they're suffering through the side effects, the gut issues and the slowed gut motility. And they
Reflux
are
issues and everything.
I mean, all kinds of issues with digestion. And the
Yeah.
crazy thing is, I think the studies show that that does not return. Like, that is a thing that they really are starting to paralyze or slow gut motility, and it doesn't improve once they get off. And it increases the risk of thyroid cancer. I'm like, okay, we're already at risk for that when you're dealing with Hashimoto's. But they go off of it. Now they've lost lean muscle mass because they're not eating enough protein, and they've lost other tissue. They gain the weight back, and it's at a now their body fat is at a higher percentage, and their overall health is much worse, and now they're more insulin resistant. So I just don't think it's a long-term solution. Again, we're relying on something from the outside in to repair the body, and that's just not how those medications work. There are always side effects. One of my mentors also say medications don't have side effects, medications have direct effects. It just might not be the effect that you're looking for, which is why they call it a side effect.
Yeah, and it's talking to the people as well because like they're doing this thing for because they want to improve their health, right? And they've been bought into it. And then you speak to them and their back is automatically up. They don't want to hear about it, but it's how you treat them with love. Like, sure, okay, I'm going to support you through
Yep.
this so we can
Yep.
get to the other end and then rebuild slowly. But with
Yes.
the accountability, like one of your things being the coach aspect of like getting the plan right, but the accountability to make sure you don't go and chuck it all back on. And it's going to take time if we can get to the best place, but we need to get you to as good a place as we can.
For
Now,
sure. I have a lot of patients that come in on those GLP-1s.
yeah,
And once they understand, because a lot of them do not understand what it does, they don't understand the side effects, they don't understand. They just know it's a weight loss thing and it's kind of trendy and everybody's moving in that direction. But once they understand, they're like, okay, Dr. Heather, I am happy with the weight loss. I just want to keep it off, but I want to get off. So, can we create a plan to do that? And absolutely. So, let's create a plan to get your body back more into function and then slowly get you off of that so that you don't gain all the weight back.
yeah.
And not to for anybody to feel bad or shameful for taking those, but it's just important that we start to look at balancing body physiology as you want to come off of those.
I think that's where it's even more important. Like your fifth pillar about having a coach is even more important to have someone that understands it, not trying to like pitch for me or pitch for you or anything. It's that the people that are selling you this are the drug companies that want to make the money. And
Yeah.
like the actual some of the bloods that some of my clients have got that they've had to get are really terrible. There's like five or six different markers. They might be
Yeah.
looking at HDL or LDL, like they're not really looking too deep into cholesterol. They're looking at triglycerides and maybe HbA1c. So it's when you get that support of someone that wants to help you through to the other side. I think it's really powerful. Now, just aware of the time aspect. Do we only get five of the pillars? We got two
We
more.
did. Yep.
Right.
So, pillar number 6 is that you have to have continued testing. So
Okay.
I see so many times where they do testing, but then they don't get follow-up testing so that you've got to get follow-up testing to make sure that you're continued on the right path. But once you handle the underlying issues or the main priorities, you don't need to keep supporting that. You've got to keep moving with the body as the body heals to get it to a really good space. You should not be on a load of supplements forever. Like I probably take maybe 3 or 4 supplements right now, just as a maintenance thing, just to improve. But you shouldn't constantly have to be improving underlying imbalances. We should now even move into optimization so your body changes and so does the treatment plan. So, pillar number 6 is continued testing and continued follow up testing. And pillar number 7 is continued customization of care. So, this is an ever moving thing, right? You're on a health journey. It's not like do testing once, apply the treatment plan and stay on that treatment plan forever. Your body is adjusting, healing and moving and it needs to be the plan needs to be adjusted.
I love that because so many times I see people that like we don't have to have health insurance over here, but they like when people have their health insurance, they don't even get their annual check. And a lot of the
Mm-hmm.
annual checks that are included in those, like if they just go with them direct ones, they aren't the best, but they're still an annual check. You're still going
Yeah.
to get the standard markers, shall we say. But the amount of times, and one of the things I do honestly think with people is that sometimes it gets to the point where they're worried about what the results say. Like one of my best friends has really pushed himself in work, and I've been trying to get him to get his bloods done, and I've finally got him to get it. We ordered it yesterday, but it's taken about 3 months. And about 3 weeks ago, I said to him, "Why are you holding fire? Like your brother died early, and with health conditions. Like why are you holding fire? Like are you worried about what it will say?" And he didn't automatically say yes, but that pushed him to then order it. Yeah, it still took 3 weeks, but it's that continued testing and customization of care. Of like you've said, you getting your bloods done regularly, and you love your bloods. Like I get my bloods done every 4 to 6 months, but
Mm-hmm.
also there might be individual markers I might just test here and there, just like to stay on top of them in between, like just a smaller marker. And I think it's powerful to do that. Now,
Yeah.
um, you've got your website reversemycondition.com. I've got three different links here, and which one is it? So reversemycondition.com and then the thyroid transformation blueprint.com is the quick start.
Yeah, so the thyroid transformation blueprint.com, it will give you, I believe, a free download of my book, The Thyroid Transformation Masterclass.
Yep.
The best way people can find me is on Facebook. I have a group called Happy, Healthy, and Lean. Now, unfortunately, for a lot of your audience, it's a women's only group.
It's fine.
The
As I
men,
say, I've
I
got a lot of
promise,
women.
men do not want to be in there. This is only us women that are in there, and it's called Happy, Healthy, and Lean. And I have over 100, I think, 111,000 ladies in there, and we are an active group. I do Thyroid Thursdays live every Thursday night. I have master classes every month, and I go in there live almost every single day. So it's an amazing community. And so it's Happy, Healthy, and Lean on Facebook.
Okay, it's interesting you say that actually, because I probably get about 5 or 6 women. As I said, like 60% of the following is women, but I'm targeting dads at the moment and very much talking about testosterone and stuff. And 5 or 6 times a week, I'm getting women say, I wish my partner would listen to you or my husband would listen to you. And I'm like, I wish he would as well. But us guys are stubborn. The older they get, the lower the testosterone and everything that happens, the even more stubborn they get. But like, I just wish, and I know if my wife comes to me and tells me to do something, like sometimes I'm like, I'm not going to do it. Just he said it, but I'll look into it a little bit slower and do it in my own time. So hopefully, like they are talking about it, but there's definitely women that are seeing it. And your Instagram is at Dr. Heather Stone.
Yes, that's right. And I'm going to post this um, podcast in that group because I have women every single day saying, where can my husband go? Because obviously he doesn't want to sit in this group with a bunch of women. So I think it'll give them a good place to go and get some amazing information.
Good to have the conversation, and maybe one
Yeah.
of the guys will take action. Like maybe like 100 of them, but one of them will actually take action. But thank you so much for joining me here. Is there anything else that you want to share that we haven't shared across here that you think would be powerful for the listeners to hear?
Well, I think if I just could reinforce that, you know, at the end of the day, our bodies are born to heal. And it's always trying to help and it's always trying to get you to survival. And so many of us start to lose hope or we feel like something is wrong or broken or something's wrong with us. Why isn't our body doing what we want it to do or what someone else's body is doing? And I think at the end of the day, if you would just do some digging to figure out what is the underlying root cause or causes that you're struggling with, the body can heal. And it doesn't stop moving to heal until the last breath that you take. I don't care what age you are, I don't care what phase of life you're in. The body is always able to move into the most survival position, but sometimes we just have to change the environment with which it's in, whether that's physically, emotionally, or the outside environment. But everybody's body can heal. And so just continue moving forward on the health journey.
Amazing. Well, thank you for joining. I think we could have like chatted for about 3 or 4 hours on the different things that
I
kept
think
coming up.
so.
So especially with like our like history with the mentors and stuff like that. But thank you for joining me. And yeah, hopefully the listeners have got something positive from that and like they get in touch.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. It's been great fun.
My pleasure.